Everybody to the planning board agenda, our planning board meeting for May 3rd, 2021. Again, of course, being held virtually. Before we kick off, I do have a couple of housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded by Westford Cat. We respectfully ask that everybody mute their computer mics and phones when they are not in use to avoid unnecessary noise during the meeting. This is an open meeting, so for all the panelists that have access to the chat panel, I would like to remind you to not use that function to discuss any of the content of the meeting, but to ask a question or any technical issues with the video conferencing platform, and please direct them to the organizers. All votes will be done by roll call. Again, everybody's going to be muted upon arrival into the meeting. If an attendee wishes to contribute a question or a comment, they may virtually raise their hand via the platform's control panel, and the chair or staff will recognize and unmute the participant where they can voice their concerns, similar to approaching the microphone at a live meeting. Or individuals may submit questions and comments to the chair and staff by utilizing the questions function. These will be compiled and included into the hearing at the appropriate time. And due to limitations of the platform, attendees that are accessing the meeting via the telephone number at the bottom of the agenda will only be able to listen to the proceedings. It will not be able to contribute. Please access the video conference via the link on the agenda, even if you don't have a webcam to participate. So joining us tonight, we have all 5 members of the planning board and Matt Salem and Jeff Morissette from staff. So we'll start off with open forum. Is there anything from staff for open forum?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, great. I'll go to the board. Anything from the board for open forum? Nope, I don't have anything either. All right, good. So no open forum items. That brings us to our public hearing items. Our first agenda item, PB 2102, is an application for subdivision and stormwater management permit at 0 and 37 Carlisle Road. The applicant has requested postponement without discussion until the May 17th meeting. Is there a motion to continue the public hearing to May 17th?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor of continuing, say aye. Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
I say aye. All right, moving right along. So the second public hearing item is actually in 5 sections. So these are the proposed zoning bylaw amendments to discuss. So what I'd like to do is, I think to keep things orderly, is we'll open up each item individually, have discussion, and then likely continue each item until the next meeting, and then go on and open up the next item. So that way we can kind of limit discussion to the item on hand or at hand. So that being said, it's going to require a few more votes tonight, but at least it'll hopefully keep us orderly. So that being said,
I have one question. I favor doing that. I just want to make sure we don't have a problem doing that, Jeff. Was it advertised as separate hearings? What do we have for?
So I don't believe it poses a problem as long as you make sure you state affirmatively whether you're opening all or each individually, as long as you make that conscious vote and you're clear about it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Darren. Thank you.
no, good question. But all right. So that being said, we'll move on to our first zoning bylaw amendment item, which is PB 2111, to consider gender neutral amendments to the town's zoning bylaw. Is there a motion to waive the reading of the public hearing notice?
I make a motion to waive.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of waiving, say aye. Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Mike?
Mike, you're muted.
Sorry, guys. Aye.
All right, cool. I say aye. Is there a motion then
Make a
to
motion
open?
to open the public hearing for PB 2111, gender neutral amendments to the town's zoning bylaw.
Awesome.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of opening the public hearing for PB 2111, say aye. Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
I say aye. All right, so let's, we can have a discussion about this tonight. I think I'll hand it over to Kate. Kate, if you don't mind, can you kind of give us an overview of this one since you were involved in the amendments?
Sure. This was at the request of the select board. So this is actually a select board item on the town meeting warrant. It is not actually a planning board item. So, but because it has to do with the zoning bylaws, we have to give a recommendation. So they requested that some people help with going through the general bylaws as well as the zoning bylaws and to make them gender neutral. For example, there are a few sentences that have "he shall do this" or his property, and so they wanted to make it not masculine. So I went through the entire zoning bylaws. I did a search for he, his, him, anything like that. And any sentences that had one of those pronouns in it, I then went through the sentence and figured out how I could make it a gender neutral sentence without changing the meaning of the sentence. So I did that. I think there might be 7 or 9, I haven't actually counted it, sentences where I proposed changes to it. Since we were amending wording of bylaws, staff alerted me to a couple of words that were misspelled. So we added those since we're in there as well. And then I also noticed that there were some sentences that used the pronoun their, T-H-E-I-R, and being a grammatical fanatic, I reviewed each of those sentences to make sure that when they used it, it was actually a plural pronoun, and where it wasn't for a plural, I changed it. So like, I would say the police chief or the fire chief instead of their. So that's what I did. And you can see some of them. So like 4.3.4, it's their premises. I made it its premises because, and then the next one you can see it was she or he may require. And so I modified that. So each of these I highlighted in red what got changed, and then repeated the sentence, and then in red and underlined what I changed it to. I don't think we
Great. Yeah,
necessarily need to go through every single one unless somebody has a comment about it. Yeah,
no, thanks for doing that.
This one he's showing is one where I changed there to be so that you would know who they are.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I read through them. They make sense to me. There's no, like you pointed out, there's no substantive changes to the language of the bylaws. So I think it looks great.
Yep. So
Any comments from the board? Okay, go ahead, Kate.
no, I was just going to say we just have to have a recommendation when we finally get around to voting on all these articles. We just have to have a recommendation for town meeting on this.
All right, cool. Yeah, my thought would be to continue each of these till next week. That way, if somebody couldn't make this meeting, they may have some comments next week, and then we can close them and vote on them at that point, most likely.
Well, since town meeting is in June, I figure yeah, that's true. That's not that far away. Okay.
Right. So, all right, good. Any comments from the board on this one?
Just one comment on your last comment, Darren, and that is, I think because on a number of these, we're going to have a couple of other forums besides our public hearing. There's going to be, for example, the League of Women Voters is going to hold 2 information nights. There's a social gathering on the 19th of this month and another one on the 3rd of June. My recommendation is if we can do it and it's legal, keep this open until our meeting on the 7th of June, that Monday, prior to town meeting, and then close. That allows us to take in all of the questions and respond to them from these different forums, in addition to our own hearing. And if we did find something that came up of interest, for example, through the League of Women Voters Night, the individual that raised it, we could request that they come to the hearing to make it part of our record. But I think that provides us the maximum flexibility to respond to any of the different forums that will bring forth questions.
Yeah, it seems to make sense. Jeff, does that work from a legal and staff and a timing perspective?
So I started looking into this. I did not see anything specific that jumped out at me. There could be some, what I do want to do is I will check with council before your next meeting on the 17th, confirm that there are no issues with that approach, but then we need to just check, separate from that, logistical issues for if there's printing considerations, things like that. So by your next meeting, we can give you what the legal deadline would be. And from a practical standpoint, if you were to make changes, what would be the last date for convenience to get everything done and done once? So does that sound like a good approach?
Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah. Great. Did someone not mute their phone when coming into the meeting?
No, that was me, sorry.
Can, Matt, is there anything, we'll go to the audience. Matt, is there anybody raising their hand for this one?
Dan, I had one comment.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Don.
Yeah, no problem. On the whole, this was really well done, Kate, and certainly I'm not going to go toe-to-toe with Kate as far as linguistics goes. But I would offer one potential insertion of the word "and" in 9223, so that the proposed would read due to an inability to obtain a permit.
Sounds good.
I like that.
All right. Fellow grammarian.
Dad was an English teacher.
That's right. All right, anything else before we go to the audience, then anything else from the rest of the board for comments or questions on it? Nothing? Anything, Matt, from the audience?
I do not see any hands raised, Mr. Chair.
All right, great. All right, so I think the suggestion would be to continue this. Is there a motion to continue PB 2111 to continue discussion to the May 17th planning board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of continuing, say aye. Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
All right, I say aye. All right, that brings us to our second zoning bylaw amendment discussion, which is for PB 2112, to consider amending the zoning bylaw to update section 3.4, home occupations, to allow for home occupations by right.
I'll
Is there
make
a
a
motion? Yeah,
I'll make a
Bob.
motion to waive the reading for PB 2112 to amend the zoning bylaw to update section 3.4 home occupations and to allow for home occupations by right, and waive the reading of that hearing notice.
Second.
All right. And that was for just for the waiving the public hearing reading, right? Notice?
Correct. That's all it was.
All right, perfect. So there's a motion, a second. All those in favor of waiving the reading of the public hearing notice, say aye. Bob,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Dylan,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
I say aye.
I'll make a motion that to open the public hearing regarding PB 2112 to amend the zoning bylaw to update section 3.4, home occupations to allow for home occupations by right.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of opening the public hearing for PB 2112, say aye. Bob,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Dylan,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
I say aye. All right, so this one is sponsored by the planning board. Jeff, do you want to give a quick rundown on this one?
Sure, Mr. Chair, thank you. So as you know, for several years, we've contemplated such a proposal. It's been a number of home occupations going before the Zoning Board of Appeals through a special permit process. And for those of you who have been through it, it's essentially a 3-month-long process. You must submit about a month in advance. You have the actual hearing. If it's not continued, there's still we have 14 days or more to clock in, and there's still an appeal period. So you add it up and it's approximately a 3-month process. By the time you add in the application fees, the publication in the newspaper, and a butter notification, you're probably spending $1,000 plus or minus, and that's if you're self-representing. So there's been a lot of what I would characterize as fairly innocuous home occupations over the last couple of years. And in particular, throughout the pandemic, there's been quite a surge in folks who are looking to supplement their income. A lot of it stemmed from people trying to do some baking out of their homes and selling off premise. And so we thought it made sense, if there was no discernible evidence of the home occupation and it was confined to certain standards, that if the neighbors couldn't tell, why have this disincentive for a 3-month process and all those fees for a rather modest business? We think it's good for the residents. We think it's good for business. Who knows what might incubate out of the home and grow. We think this is a win both from staff and being business favorable. And so we did work with town council that has this draft language in front of you. I do want to point out, though, there was one unintentional omission under section 3.4.1.25. We omitted the word such. So it should read, no area greater than 1/3 of the area of one floor of the dwelling structure is used for such uses. So high level, big picture, if you're going to do a home business out of your home and it takes up, it's incidental, it takes up, a limited amount of the area. If you don't have foot traffic being generated, you don't have customers or pupils going to your home, and you don't have any employees who don't reside at the premise, this is a way to have an administrative process to be allowed by right. And the building commissioner would just review this and sign off as part of a license with the town clerk's office. If, however, it is discernible from the neighbors and from the public, or if you have foot traffic, you would have the public hearing process just as would be required now. So this is only to allow the administrative for those very minor businesses where from the customary glance, one couldn't tell the business was happening there at all. So I don't know if that's a good start. Let's see if you have questions.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
I have one simple question. Could you repeat where the missing such was?
Sure. So there we go, Matt. So 3.4.1.2, if you go to number 5, which
Okay,
starts off,
got it.
so used for uses, it should say used for such uses.
Thank you.
I apologize for that oversight.
No, great. Thanks for the overview there. That's great. I think it makes a lot of sense. I'll go to the board. Any comments or questions, Bob?
Yeah, there was only one comment I had, and I noticed the term substantial, and I'm trying to, just the use shall not create substantial additional traffic or require additional parking space And just wondering about that word substantial. That's in 3.4.2.
Yes.
And just wondering if that gives us the necessary leeway.
Well, one quick second, please.
I guess the example I've always thinking about was when I grew up, my optometrist was a home-based office, and I just think back to, and I don't think that's permitted here because I think this eliminates client traffic. It looks like the only additional traffic that would be permitted is related to the deliveries or that traffic generated by the homeowner themselves. Would that be correct?
So you raised another question. So this proposed amendment doesn't change any part of the first section, 3.4.1, professional office. There's already an existing provision for businesses such as a lawyer, architect, or physician, engineer, or accountant. So that is unchanged. There's already some protections in place for that.
Ah, okay. I didn't catch that. Thank you.
We did not want to touch that. So in essence, we kept that section intact, and where there were already provisions to allow for it in the I'm generalizing, but the non-residential districts, we really didn't touch that at all. The only thing that we changed is if a proposed business could fit under the greater microscope, of no employees who don't reside there. Things like that, like it could be further fit into that more restrictive category, then they wouldn't need the public hearing process. But if they did have vehicle trips coming to their home, not typical delivery vehicles, at some point there's going to be some discretion by the building commissioner. For instance, if he receives complaints about a high volume of traffic going to the site on any given day, he investigates the complaint, he may well then determine that they must seek special permit relief from the zoning board. But the building commissioner is first going to have an opportunity to review the proposal as part of the license through the town clerk's office. And that's an opportunity to clarify the expectations with each and every applicant at that time. And if they differ from what they say they're going to do, then they may be well subject to enforcement and required to seek special permit relief.
Okay.
Great. All right, is that, you all set, Bob?
I had one other question, and that had to do in 3413, exterior storage. I just want to make sure, does that exterior means it's stored outside? That would not apply if they had a storage shed that was separate from the dwelling unit, would it?
So I believe under these provisions, they are allowed to store some things it has to be part of the principal structure. Let me just find this. So there can't be an outside change in the appearance. So if someone usually the outside storage typically refers to stuff, junk out in the yard. But usually if it's inside a storage shed, I think that would get looked at differently. Exterior storage, I believe it may be defined. It's things that are not contained within a proper structure and screened from view.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to just make sure, so. I'm good.
I would picture like racks and shelves outside with stuff on them. That would be what I would consider exterior storage there.
And right, and that would trigger a special permit public hearing process.
Right.
Because it's
exactly.
obviously viewable as a business.
Yeah, okay. Got it. All right, all set, Bob?
All set.
Well, Kate, any comments or questions?
I just want to confirm for the 3413, which is home occupations in all remaining districts, which is basic. which is basically residential. Number E says does not involve any customers, pupil or client trips. And G is registered as a business with a town clerk. So Airbnbs, they don't get a buy through this bylaw.
Yeah, I think they don't, because there's a phrase in here, Kate, that this does not permit any client traffic.
You're right. That's what I'm confirming, that
Right.
that even though it's an auxiliary use of the home, because it has clients, it's not a,
In
it doesn't fall under this.
3413,
Yep.
E does not
Right.
involve any customer, pupil, or client trips.
Right. Yep. Okay, that was my only comment. I had the question about substantial, and in looking, that is in non-residential, so mainly in commercial and industrial, so it makes sense. That's all.
All right, I think if someone tried to do an Airbnb, that the residents, the guests would be considered customers, right? So they wouldn't be able to do that.
Yep.
Right.
Gotcha, okay.
That's how we
Right.
view that.
Yep, Dylan?
Okay,
I didn't have any questions beyond what's been asked. Thanks, Darren.
Cool. Mike?
No questions.
All right, good. I think Bob and Kate, you guys covered mine, so thank you.
you're gonna have to start with somebody else next time.
Maybe I'll start at the other end. You guys are always in the same order, by the way. So I don't know why. But all right, so Matt, is there anybody from the audience that has any comments or questions on this one?
I do not see any hands raised, Mr. Chair, nor have we received any questions.
All right, perfect. All right,
Don't start with me with drive-throughs, Darren.
what do you got?
Don't start with me with drive-throughs.
All right, we'll keep the same order for that one.
Right.
All right, so I think we're good here. Is it, anybody from the board have any other comments on this one? Otherwise, I think we can continue it to the next meeting.
Mr. Chair, there was a hand raise. I missed one.
Okay, great.
Mr. Minucci, if you could please state your name and address for the record and unmute yourself.
Hi, Mark Minucci, 6 Rolling Meadow Lane. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thanks.
I had a question about the language in sub-bullet E, 3413E, when it mentions the word pupil. Does this mean, for example, if someone starts a piano teaching business, like an individual has a piano and they're an expert teacher of some sort, and they have a student come over I don't know what, I just want to understand what the word trip means here. There's some issue here if a student comes over for a piano lesson, for example. Can someone just clarify that for me?
Mr. Chair, if you'd like. So, yes, you're correct. So if someone was to have, say, students come to their home for lessons, that would entail foot traffic, as we call it, and that would then rise to the level of needing a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is presently the case now.
Right.
That seems like this effort to foster incubation, or within it, with a hope of some level of incubation and leniency, we're creating a pretty narrow swim lane here of things that might go on. It's it seems fairly limited. Is that the intention, to keep it really super tight, or?
Well, we were hoping to start with something, as you say, fairly limited, to increase the chances of passage, because we've probably had 10 or 12 applicants, or would-be applicants. Some of them never pursued it once they found out about the process. And that's a policy question that I would defer to the board if they want to try to adjust that.
So,
And I was going to say, just to clarify, these are by right, so it means that they would not have to come before us.
That's right. So,
I guess,
yeah, I mean,
But before the zoning board.
well, I guess before looking at putting it in section 3413, I'm thinking, what about 3411 under professional office definitions? Could we consider putting in a teacher or tutoring instruction as one of those professions that we would list under the professional office?
Yeah, then you have to limit the number of students you can have there too for, if it's, is it then group study allowed, I think that's what we kind of get into.
Or maybe we talk about individual music instruction or individual tutoring services.
Yeah, that's my suggestion. I'm going to shut off and go on mute. Individual tutoring is roughly what I was getting at. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean,
Would you like us to work with town council to broach that and see if we can come up with some efficient language to allow for that?
yeah, if that makes sense, Jeff, to Bob's point, if we can add it into the, 3412, as an individualized, whether it's lessons or tutoring, something like that.
Bob, you meant 3411, right?
I actually said 3411, Darren.
Okay, yeah, perfect then, okay.
Yes.
Okay, we can, and you know what? I would say if it gets to town meeting and we have that language in there, I think it would be a fairly easy amendment to simply remove that option from that one section. It's always easy if you have to amend language,
Right.
take out what is already redlined. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm amenable to that. Is anybody on the board have any issues with trying to allow that one-on-one tutoring?
The only other suggestion I have to Jeff and staff is we might have to work in a definition in the definition section to cover this possibly, so that we are precisely define what we mean by individual tutor or individual instructor.
Right. Okay.
Not complicated, but
Well, the more changes that we make,
Right.
it may
I know.
put us closer to going outside the box, but we can work with council on that. I don't know that any of these other professions are necessarily defined in our zoning bylaw either, so
okay, that's fine.
I don't
But
want to
I
put us at odds with the moderators, really.
Could we not come at it from a different angle and sort of say that the vehicle traffic shouldn't exceed that which could be reasonably parked in the residences off-street parking? Is it a question really of trips, or is it a question of not having, that traffic spill out into the public way and potentially be an impediment to other, pedestrians and traffic in the subdivision or the area of the residence, right?
I think it's
So
both.
if I may, I think one of the clearest lines of division is whether or not you had people physically going to your home. And
Right.
so now, unless, I think it's cleaner to introduce such a change into the professional office section, because then it's sort of an upfront exception. Whereas if you include it in the other ones and you start putting provisions on it, I think that's not as straightforward.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, and then I think you get into discussion about, well, what's the limit then? Can you have 2 students or 3 students? I think that we don't avoid
Right.
that.
But it sounds like one-on-one, so that
Yeah.
way it's pretty fine. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Matt, anything else from the audience on that one?
I do not see any hands raised, Mr. Chair.
All right, cool. That said, is there then a motion to continue PB 2112 discussion to the next meeting of May 17th?
so moved.
Second.
All right, is a motion a second? All those in favor of continuing, say aye. Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
I say aye. All right, that brings us to our next zoning bylaw amendment discussion, which is for PB 2113. To consider amending the zoning bylaw to update section 9.5.1 to allow drive-through restaurants in a certain section of town. So is there then a motion to waive the reading of the public hearing notice for PB 2113?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
motion? Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor of waiving the reading of the public hearing notice, say aye. Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
I say aye. Is there a motion
I'll
to
make a
open
motion.
the public hearing?
Open the public hearing for PB 2113 to amend the zoning bylaw to amend section 10.2, Appendix A and Appendix B for the purpose of defining and regulating restaurant drive-through facilities.
Oh, okay.
Second.
Okay. All right, motion and a second. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye. Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
I say aye. So I will, Bob, if you don't mind, hand it over to you for an update and overview on this one.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a little history here. This was actually really put on as a placeholder by the board of the select board. I think following last fall's special town meeting, the Westford Economic Development Committee had met with some business owners, and some of those business owners had requested to look at drive-through restaurant facilities again, and to look at the business benefits and business impacts if this could in fact be pursued. So that was briefed to the Economic Development Committee. I believe it was late February when it was first briefed to them. And throughout the month of March, we looked at this, and I think I went into the meeting on the 5th of April thinking we would probably postpone this until the fall special town meeting so that we could run an information hearing process, information dissemination and information collection with our residents, much akin to what Acton's been doing for the last 4 or 5 months, as well as to run a townwide survey on this so that we could respond to the residents at the request of what would happen with the Economic Development Committee and the town manager requesting this. But because of the presence of the article that would limit the abilities of the planning board to revisit articles voted down and restrict it for 2 years, I think it kind of forced our hand to now take it up now. So we are now pursuing it, and you see in the packet tonight the first draft of the motion. And the current plan is to run a survey. I think we're going to get the survey out on the town website in the next few days. That survey content is also in your packets. And I would suggest, Mr. Chair, that we probably should discuss the survey slightly separately here with the board members. I'm certainly open to taking additional amendments, additional changes, or additions to the questions. I kept it kind of broad, similar to what Acton did. We don't have quite the uniqueness of the neighborhoods where we would be putting or proposing to put drive-through restaurants as Acton has. So the question was a little simpler. In addition, we are planning to run 2 information forums. The first one would be this Thursday night, the 6th of May at 7 p.m. And the second would be on the 26th of May at 7 p.m. And if it's not already out there today, the announcement should be out on the town website with a link for that meeting that I will be running with the EDC this Thursday evening. So with that said, let me give a quick overview now of what the motion for this would look like. After discussing this with town staff and doing some research on what was done in surrounding communities such as Chelmsford and Acton, what's coming up with Acton, I crafted this motion as a drive-through restaurant overlay district. And you see that defined here as all of those parcels that are in the commercial highway district or zone that have frontage along Littleton Road. So there's a few parcels in CH that do not front on Littleton Road. Some of them are buried back behind other parcels off of Littleton Road. And we also have some other parcels that are up in the north section of the town in the CH district. So this right now, as an overlay district, keeps this real clean, looking for only those districts in CH on Littleton Road or Route 110. Also, obviously, this is defined to be done through a special permitting process. And then there are standards here, and these standards are where I expect to get the most information and hopefully the most input from the residents as we go through the information meetings coming up. But this has been styled somewhat based upon the Route 129 overlay district that Chelmsford put in place recently. And there were some good ideas here. One, I am aiming this to be drive-through restaurants that are not drive-through restaurant kiosks. So they must have interior seating. So that's why there's a minimum of 10 interior seats listed here. For safety and traffic flow reasons right now, these restaurants must either be freestanding or they must be located on an end cap at the current time. I'm certainly open if a business has a situation, or I wouldn't say business, but a strip mall owner had a situation where they could show us that there would be a potential configuration of a restaurant that might be considered a non-end cap unit. I would certainly be willing to take that into consideration and to craft the language accordingly. But right now, I can't think of any situations, and following some visual surveys with myself and EDC, have not identified any such restaurant potential opportunities on the Littleton Road corridor. Also, the restaurant must provide already for consumption of the food on premises, also must consider for the consumption of food in outdoor dining areas. So we're looking to tailor this towards the restaurant that is kind of providing the maximal breadth of services here, both internal and outdoor dining options. Also looking right now, I've suggested some limiting hours of 5:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. That kind of provides good food for thought, and we'll see if the residents want to further restrict that and what those restrictions would be. Signage I'm still working on. I have spoken with town staff. I have also just today spoken with Chelmsford's Director of Business Development as well as their Director of Community Development, and have a few suggestions from them. So I'm looking to craft language for the signage. For the most part, signage would be continued to be governed by the sign bylaw. And so I've got to work that language in here. That's really all I want to say on that. Let me just now talk about the fact I've been working very closely with the Economic Development Committee, with Bruce Rosenberg, with Ron Caterino and Tom Barry. As I say, today we just met with some folks from Chelmsford to talk about what's going on there. I still need to reach out to Acton. They're still in the formative stages like we are. Their town meeting, I believe, is 9 days after ours. So there's not going to be something coming out of their town meeting that we really could utilize at ours. I am looking to see what their motion looks like and to see if there's any conditions, any additional restrictions that we might benefit from. Also, with the help of Bruce Rosenberg, he has reached out and put me in contact with the Middlesex 3 Coalition. We're also working, and we will be meeting with later this week, the Mass Restaurant Association representatives. And also we'll be reaching out to Tingsboro to understand how they've been handling drive-through restaurants. And so I hope to reach out with their Director of Economic Development and the town planner up there. And lastly, we have also been doing research And with Ron Caterino's assistance, we've been building up a repository of reference articles on drive-throughs and the impacts they have in terms of economic development and response during a pandemic, as well as what the potential benefit to the restaurant is in terms of increased sales. I will be looking to also summarize a paradigm or a summary of an ontology of all of the different delivery paradigms and put that in perspective in terms of, eat-in formal dining versus casual dining versus curbside pickup versus curbside pickup with social distancing, et cetera. So that should all be ready by this Thursday night at the first information forum. And I'll also plan to share that material with the planning board at the continuation of this hearing at the next meeting. That's kind of a quick summary. Back to you, Darren.
Yeah, that's a lot. There's thanks for all the work there in the background. I think, look forward to hearing comments. I think the public forum on Thursday should be helpful as well. So I'll go to the board for this one. Kate, any comments or questions?
You muted, Kate.
No, I look forward to what Bob is putting together. So nothing right now.
Okay, thank you. Dylan?
I feel the same as Kate. I mean, I think it's and I'm kind of looking forward to the feedback from, the residents to help drive some further discussion amongst us around, 896, the standard section that that Bob was referring to in his comments.
Yeah. Good. Mike?
I've got nothing at this point. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah,
I
I'm on the
did have
same
one
boat.
question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
In the packet, some of the things say, like the published motion, it says the full text of the proposed amendment is on file with the town clerk. So is the full motion even more than what was in our packet?
No. There was I think Jeff can answer that, but back several weeks ago, we had to get this clocked in with the town clerk. And so as part of the hearing process, and so you see that we got it clocked in on the 16th of April.
Okay, alrighty. Sorry to interrupt you, Darren.
No, it's good. I think, there's been a lot of work on this to date, and I think it'll continue over the next week or two with Bob's leadership here. So, yeah, we should get a lot of input from residents, I'm sure, here too. So looking forward to seeing as it's coming together. Anything from staff, Jeff, Dad? Oh, good.
I have one other point, and I didn't catch this, but what we clocked in was fast casual. And after talking with Chelmsford and talking with some other references in the business, probably going to have to go back to fast food. I kind of learned a lot more since we got this clocked in from what Chelmsford was doing. And fast casual was limited to a very, very select area of Chelmsford. And it would probably be too restrictive for us. Certainly learned enough so that if we did want to have a fast casual district within the drive-through restaurant overlay district, I would know how to craft it now and define it. But
Okay.
I do have to make that change. As I say, this was what we clocked in, but we're going to be making changes on this, I suspect, with community input all the way up to the meeting on the floor of town meeting.
Right. All right. Jeff, anything from staff before we go to the audience?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, great. Matt, anybody have their hand raised on this one?
So, Mr. Chair, we've received one question or two questions submitted via the question platform, and then I see a couple of hands raised in the audience. So if we can go to the questions first submitted. The first was, how do you define upscale fast casual? And 2, how do you address the businesses that cannot have a drive-through due to their location in strip malls? It puts them at an unfair competitive disadvantage. Those 2 questions were submitted by Vicky Geary.
So, and this is what we're going to strike this, but I will give you what the definition of upscale fast casual is. Upscale fast casual are those restaurants which offer their dine-in patrons the ability to use reusable cutlery and reusable service ware. And that is why we probably will not do it, because there are many fast food restaurants that do not do that today. They use reusable. We could certainly look at recyclable, non-reusable as a requirement, but I will be striking upscale fast casual here. It was a good intent, but it was not going to be achievable for all of the businesses that want to have drive-throughs in Westford.
Okay.
With respect to the other question, the second question, in all cases of zoning, there's many different businesses that we regulate through zoning, and not all businesses can adapt to all of the different locations. There are issues of parking. There are issues of septic capacity at a site. That comes into play when we look at where restaurants can be located within certain developments. And this is just another example where, typically the rent or the sale price of a property is dictated by the ability for that to support the businesses that are being considered. And so we just cannot create a solution for everyone, and there will be limitations. I mean, we are putting in the end cap limitation not to favor just those businesses, but rather that is a traffic and safety consideration. We are, looking at that because of traffic flow within a site. And we are not trying to penalize middle unit owners. It's just that we don't see a way to safely provide for a drive-through service in a strip mall for the middle units. As I said, I'm open to suggestions and would consider amending this if there were certain conditions that a middle unit could demonstrate they satisfy that would allow for such a safe construction of a drive-through window.
Got it. Thank you.
Again, I would just say to all the folks that are asking these questions, please come out and participate in the forum. We certainly will be open. We'll have more time for people to participate, ask questions, and get a dialogue going between all the parties that are concerned with this.
Right. Matt, so there were a couple of people with their hands up still?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Anita, you are currently mute. If you unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Anita Tonakarngwen. I'm at 9 Plain Road. And I guess I'll just, for full disclosure, kind of share the other hats that I wear in town. I serve on the select board. I'm also on the Commission on Disability, and I'm also on the Cultural Council. But I'm not here tonight representing any of those groups or in any kind of official capacity, obviously. But I do plan to attend Thursday's public forum to listen in to see how the community input goes. But I did want to just first thank the Planning Board for sponsoring this article, and I do want to reiterate my support for the article. As Bob mentioned earlier, this ask is coming to us directly from local businesses in Westford, and we know that businesses have been really hurt this year because of COVID, right? And I know we talk a lot as a town about supporting our local businesses, and here we are getting a direct ask from them, an ask that persists, keeps coming up in town meeting, and it's one that other businesses like banks and pharmacies already benefit from. right? And I personally frequent drive-throughs pretty regularly. I do drive to Chelmsford or Kingsborough or Lowell and use a drive-through. And I often think about how I wish this was local revenue that was going back to Westford, but it's not. And this is local tax money that we're not benefiting from with every transaction that we're making. And as a mother of 2 young children, this is for convenience for sure, and for peace of mind. I don't have to carry one of my kids while holding a large cup of coffee and trying to open a car door handle, or carry a baby bucket seat, which gets very heavy as your baby grows, or worry about one of my little kids darting across a busy parking lot while my hands are full from carrying food. And I absolutely think about the disability population and improved accessibility with drive-through restaurants, but I want to point out that the same populations who benefit from drive-through banks and drive-through pharmacies also benefit from drive-through restaurants. You don't have to represent a special population to justify the need or want of using a drive-through, because I know that perfectly able-bodied people use drive-throughs all the time. So that's all that I just wanted to share tonight. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thanks, Anita.
Thank you.
Aaron, if I may, Anita reminded me, I forgot to add, and we have forgot to get this in the packet. We have presented this to the Economic Development Committee, the Commission on, the Committee on Disability, and the Council on Aging. And we have received unanimous votes of support from the members of all 3 of those boards. And I do want to just qualify that the vote for the Economic Development Committee was unanimous with 1 abstention. So that there are letters of support that are stating this, that are coming from those groups, and hopefully we'll get those into the packet next month.
Great, thank you. All right. I think that's helpful too, just to give people kind of context of, why the issue is back on the agenda here. So, Matt, was there someone else that had their hand up?
Yes, Barbara Terrio. If you state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, thank you. This is Barbara Terrio, 8 Tadmuck Lane. With all due respect to all of the work that you have done and all of the support that it seems you've been given for this particular article, I'd like to bring up another very, very, very significant point. I realize that you remember last fall that Westford adopted a climate action resolution. And that was to take actions in town to promote clean energy and reduce the fossil fuel use. Now, allowing restaurant drive-throughs in our town does go in the opposite direction of those town goals. And if you were to look up the U.S. Department of Energy points that they make, they state as number 1 that drive-through lines are a common place for vehicles to idle, and that idling for more than 10 seconds actually uses more fuel and produces more emissions than stopping and starting the engine. Now, in addition to that, the U.S. Department of Energy said that researchers estimate that idling from heavy-duty and light-duty vehicles combined wastes about 6 billion gallons of fuel a year. And half of that amount is generated by personal vehicles, our cars, especially those that are internal combustion engine cars. And that generates around 30 million tons of CO2 every year. This is significant, even at a small level. So eliminating these unnecessary idling at a drive-through is a significant step that we can take in town to reduce our carbon footprint. And I don't see this change right now to be a positive change. It's going backward in the opposite direction of the goals that we have set for town. And so that is the point I'd like to make today.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
The only response we did receive this in a letter. I do drive a stick shift. I have a Mini, and my car automatically shuts off after, I think it's 20 seconds or something if I'm idling. And it will and then it just starts up automatically when I go to move. But if I stop at a traffic light, my car will shut itself off, or if I'm stopped in a drive-through lane. So,
I think a lot of cars are doing that now, but no, it's good. It's a good point. I don't know if there's what kind of data we can see, for a drive-through, what kind of negative externalities that creates in terms of pollution, but I haven't seen anything to that effect. But
yeah, we need to get that data. We've also, in talking with Chelmsford, we talked about some of the new restaurant ordering technologies that are coming in with all of the new restaurants. And some of the fast casual and even some of the fast foods are now allowing for online ordering. And they are now certain designs for the delivery line in which you don't queue up as you would traditionally in the fast food line, but you queue up in spaces. And then when the app tells you that your order is ready for pickup, you then proceed through the line and just proceed up to the pickup window and pick up your order. So there's certainly a lot of things that are being done with that kind of technology to redesign that style of ordering and queuing.
got it. Thank you. Matt, any other comments or hand raised from the audience?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Chauncey Chu, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, hi. Yeah, good evening, Board. Chauncey Chu of 1 Green Needles Road. I won't go into what I've already sent into the board. I believe you have all of that, all of my previous comments here and how I disagree with the allowance of drive-through restaurants in town. I wanted to go specifically though tonight onto your the 891, the specifics. If I could, I can go through. I think I've got 3 comments here. Again, going back to the definition of fast casual, I think Mr. Schaefer has defined that. So I just want to reaffirm you are not going to pursue fast casual food. So I don't want to belabor the report, belabor the definition, but I just want to make sure that you have included only fast foods such as hamburgers, burritos, and so forth. Fast foods, not chicken marsala.
We are allowed. Okay.
I'm sorry?
We're going to allow for all of it and not limit it to one or the other.
So everything, fast food, fast casual. Could you define fast casual again?
Fast casual restaurants are typically restaurants that have a more formal dine-in setting in which they use reusable cutlery and reusable servingware.
So this would require more than, say, 5 minutes queue time, because it will take considerably longer to prepare chicken marsala as opposed to a hamburger.
That well aware, and that's why I said those would be restaurants in which I don't think you would have it wouldn't be like driving up to McDonald's and going up to the ordering kiosk, placing an order for chicken marsala and just sitting there in line as you wait for your order. You would either probably go up to the kiosk and then proceed to a parking slot where you would wait for your order to be prepared, or you would order it ahead electronically or by phone.
Okay, as I mentioned in my previous correspondence, this convenience factor, you're relating exactly what curbside delivery does. Isn't that true? You're offering a service that curbside delivery currently provides.
That's correct.
Okay. The other point I wanted to make on 896B, what does freestanding mean? And wouldn't that require ZBA approval on all of the setback requirements, for example?
No. Freestanding if it meets the setback requirements, would not require the ZBA relief.
Any other parameters that the freestanding unit, I'm not sure what a are you talking about a kiosk?
No, a freestanding unit would be such as Orchard Square. There is a vacant building that was designed for a bank. That is a freestanding structure. It's a single use as opposed to a multi-tenant building servicing a strip mall.
Right.
Okay, so this freestanding unit would have to have, as you said, a minimum of the 10 interior seats.
We are only allowing for drive-through on restaurants that offer dine-in service. So they have to have at least 10 interior seats.
I'm talking about a standalone unit.
It's
Right.
There.
Yes.
Yes, I mean,
Others too, yeah.
doesn't matter whether it's standalone or an end cap unit. They have to have 10 interior seats.
Okay. And the last last question I had is that the last statement here, which says the board may waive any provision A through F. Isn't that sort of ambiguous? Because isn't this the crux of the parameters here, A through F?
So this was
So you're
crafted at
making it-
many of our other bylaws in the zoning bylaws. If you look at them, they're constructed with the same equivalent language.
Okay, and then you're working on the signage here.
Yes.
For example, in the current sign bylaws, an outdoor menu, restaurant menu is limited to 2 square feet. We're not going to have a Honda sign as a Honda sign for menus. Are we?
What do you mean by a Honda sign for menus?
As like the Honda sign, we're not going to have a menu sign that's 15 feet tall.
No, that's why I think what we're looking at, Chauncey, is we're going to have to consider probably additional signage for drive-in and entry and exit. And those tend to be small signs. Those would probably be 2 square feet or so. And then the menu, thinking about it, and I need to go do more research, but a menu sign could be as much as 8 or 10 square feet if you look at typical restaurants today. Now, technology is helping to drive that size down through scrolling options, but we are looking at a sign that is substantially bigger than 2 square feet as a menu.
Okay, hey, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
On that vein, I know there was concern about more people coming off the highway. And we traditionally have, the planning board has traditionally said no signs facing the highway. So we wouldn't allow a fast food place to move in and then put up a humongous sign so that it could be seen on the highway to try and get people in. So that would not be something that we would allow.
Right. Right, good point, Kate.
Yeah.
Matt, any other comments or questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Diane Wood, state your name and address for the record, please.
Is that me? It's Diane Wood, 122 Depot. I have a question and a couple of comments. Could you tell me what the voting approval will be needed at annual town meeting for this article?
It requires a 2/3 vote of approval because it's a change to the zoning bylaw.
Okay, so that the 2/3 there was some rumor that may not be correct, that recent MGL law had changed that. So does that mean nothing has changed? It is 2/3?
So if I may, Mr. Chair, Diane, there were some recent changes, but they would not apply to this proposal whatsoever.
Okay, thank you. My other point is it seems as if there's an awful lot of work that's been done. I applaud you all for doing the research, finding out the business needs in town. Acton had started this exercise 6 to 7 months ago now. And starting this in April, getting all the information, communicating it to the voters in town, and having them all ready to make their decision by ATM in June seems like an awfully tight window. And I question the ability to be very clear and communicate exactly what people will be voting on, because it's complicated. And I don't think personally you have enough time to make that clear to everybody. I'd like to know how you feel about that.
Yeah, thank you. I think, yeah, Bob, you want to cover that, Bob? Kind of commented on that early.
I think I addressed that in my opening remarks, Diane. We went into the meeting back on the 5th of April, and I was really at that point prepared to recommend to the planning board that we pursue the process like Acton and go through an information forum through the spring into the summer months, as well as to run an extended survey like Acton did back in the January, February timeframe. But because Article 24 has been placed on the warrant, I felt that we had to respond to the request from the Economic Development Committee and the town manager to consider this for our business community, and that I didn't think it was fair to make them wait 1.5 years at that point, since we said we would consider it. So it was the presence of Article 24 being placed on the warrant that forced us into this accelerated process. But I do agree with you, this was not what I wanted to do. I don't think it's what the rest of the planning board, and they can state for themselves, would want to do in terms of accelerating this. We are running this process not only because Acton is doing it, but because following the fall town meeting, the special town meeting last October, several of the select board members spoke to us, as well as the town manager, about what to do to improve this and to run this kind of outreach program. So that's why we are where we are.
Right.
And my last comment would be, I think we all understand that we would like to support local businesses in town. But my personal fear is it will not be small local businesses that we will end up encouraging and supporting. It's going to be the owners of the developments, and it's going to be the potential for Popeye's Chicken and a Taco Bell moving in, because it's the larger companies, larger restaurants, commercial size, not the smaller ones, who'll be able to afford to work with the developers to put a drive-through in and afford all of this. So would like to definitely hear more, and I think we all do support our local small businesses, things like Paul's Diner, for example. However, my fear is that's not the reality because of the costs involved in implementing this. So I did submit some questions and some information that I think you saw. I will not be on, Thursday's call. However, I will try to catch up for the 26th.
Yeah, and as I say, Diane, I also hope to attend the 19th with the league.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, anybody else with a hand up?
Christina Green, please state your address for the record, please.
Hi, this is Christina Green, 1 Chesapeake Drive. Could you explain a little bit more the requirement for providing outdoor seating? It seems to me that outdoor seating and a drive-through is probably going to be in the same area, and I don't think I'd really want to be sitting outside eating while cars are driving by me. But maybe I'm confusing that.
So the intent here was to give the restaurant that wanted to have the drive-through, was to ensure that they were providing a full range of services to the benefit of all the customers of Westford. And it was to, provide for internal seating, but now because of, COVID and our concerns with safety, also provide the ability to have outdoor seating. And this was something that I also learned from reading the Chelmsford Route 129 overlay district bylaw. And so that's the intent there. Obviously, when we have a special permit hearing on such a restaurant, we will work with the applicant to ensure that, yes, the dining experience for the outdoor diners must be enjoyable. We are not going to be permitting a restaurant to come in and having the diners sitting right next to the idling cars, if you would. So I hear you, but there's certainly a lot of options. And we, certainly I think with some of the restaurants in town already where they have dining out front, you could easily have the traffic queue for the window wrapped around the rear and be away from the diners that are sitting outside.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I can see that. I guess I just think it puts a little bit more of a restriction on the businesses to make that work. But thank you for the explanation.
Hey, one other thing too, I guess, Darren, I want to respond to the previous speaker as well. While it is maybe a large corporation that appears to be coming in, many times the actual applicant is a franchisee who is a small business owner in some regards. They are only a representative for what appears to be a larger corporation, but it's not necessarily a corporate McDonald's or a corporate Taco Bell. Many times it's a small business owner that's coming in as a franchisee.
Right.
And the other thing I want to remind, we do need to fix here with clean energy. I've been reminded in these discussions, and I'm checking my notes here, that many times we have parents idling for 30 minutes in schools today, waiting for students. So we kind of have to, look at clean energy across the board and not just be focused on the drive-through restaurants, but all businesses and all aspects of the community, such as queuing up in our school pickup zones today.
Yep, got it. Matt, any other hands raised?
Mr. Minucci, if you could restate your address for the record. And unmute yourself.
Okay. Mark Minucci, 6 Rolling Meadow Lane, once again. Can you hear me?
Yep, thanks.
So I wanted to talk to the board about my role. I am running an anti-litter campaign in Westford as we speak. It is a campaign for all of 2021 to collect 10,000 pieces of litter. To date, we've collected 4,000 pieces out of 10,000 in only 2 months. This campaign is supported by the Westford Conservation Trust, the Westward Recycling Committee, members of the Westward Girl Scout Troop. I'm speaking this week to the Westward Clean Energy Sustainability Committee, and it's also supported by Keep Massachusetts Beautiful and its 34 chapters. I tell you this because I think you might be able to guess, aside from nips and beer cans and cigarette butts, what the next big category of litter is in the majority of towns, highways, and exit ramps in Massachusetts. It's fast food litter. All right. And this is not a debatable point. This is measurable. So a woman spoke earlier about the emissions and how climate change is on the mind of the residents of Westford. I will tell you for a fact that this category of litter will go up, and it may not be in Westford itself. We may actually be contributing towards litter on our highways, our exit ramps, entrance ramps, and to other adjacent towns. All right. So you will certainly find Dunkin' Donuts litter and fast food litter in Westford today, but it's not the volume you will see if you introduce a drive-through and increase the volume of sales of the non-reusables. I believe it was Mr. Schaefer spoke about restaurants who have plates and metal utensils, for instance, inside that are washed and reused. I want to point out that's point one about the litter. And I also want to point out that we're contributing to 2 more negative trends in this. That is obesity. Okay. We are not talking about vegetarian fast food restaurants. I'm imagining it's not, we don't have a large number of applicants here. We're talking about McDonald's and Burger Kings and Pizza Huts and I don't know what else. So there is the obesity question in supporting this kind of business. Okay. And there's another trend of people that have taken up over the quarantine, which is cooking at home, having grocery delivery services, HelloFresh, DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, which also provide alternatives to drive-throughs. So it is not a binary choice either. People go starving to death if they can't walk into a restaurant. There are many other services, HelloFresh, DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, Peapod, that provide a related service to cover these individuals who can't have access to walking into a restaurant. Let me stop there and say that I don't personally support adding drive-throughs. Even if I have used them, I am very concerned about what this will do for litter in town.
Thank you. Bob, this is a comment we've seen before from some other, opponents, especially from last time we were at town meeting. So I'm sure that will come up for discussion on Thursday night as well, probably.
Yeah, it's hard to survey, litter and to try to track it to its source and what was the cause. The obvious question here is, was this an individual that rode a bike in and picked up and walked and rode away, and then they disposed of it while they're riding their bike? Is it somebody who drove in, went into the counter, picked up a bag of food, and then they're driving up a ramp and they threw the bag out the window? Or was it a customer, such as a young person, that went in, did their counter service, walked away with a bag, and after they finished eating while they're walking, have disposed of the bag? That's the concern. We don't know what population we're dealing with here in terms of the source of the littering.
Right.
All I can say is, and I would ask, with the increase level of curbside pickups, which are somewhat similar to a drive-through pickup, have we seen an increase in the production of litter from these restaurants that are providing for curbside pickup? And I don't have the data to show that one way or the other.
Right. I do want to thank the previous commenter for the efforts in picking up litter in town, though. I think that's much appreciated. Thank you.
And I should also add to that, and I applaud him as well for that. When we had this discussion earlier today with Chelmsford, and we did talk about the litter and trash issue, one of the suggestions that they made was, as part of the special permitting process, to work out an arrangement with the restaurant owner whereby they have staff that go out so far and pick up the litter that is on the roadways in the surrounding area for their restaurant. And I thought that was a good suggestion from Chelmsford. So.
All right, thanks. Like I said, I think it's probably not the last we've heard of that one. Matt, any other participants out there?
Mr. Fassbender.
Hi, I'm experimenting with using my landline for audio, so hopefully you can hear me this time.
It sounds much clearer. Thank you.
Crystal clear.
In all this discussion, I'm really missing sort of the basic context of all of this. As has been mentioned before, this ban against drive-through restaurants hasn't happened recently or by accident. A lot of time was spent putting it into the master plan and into the zoning bylaw. I'm wondering if any of you who have been around when those documents were produced can inform the rest of us on why those were put in as an absolute prohibition. What were the people who really created those documents worried about or concerned about with drive-through restaurants, and then we can have the discussion of what's changed.
I was not part of the master plan committee. I don't think, was anybody else on the board on that?
I was.
That would have been the one before me, I think.
So I think if I recall, because I was on the master plan committee for 7 or 8 years, and that was actually the master plan implementation committee. I was not on the original master plan, but right now our master plan has been updated. I think the process I had helped initiate, I don't think I was there at the conclusion, if I recall. but concerns of trash and littering were those. But a lot of the way that the master plan was created wasn't just through the efforts of somebody like myself and the members of the committee. It was done through community forums. It was done through surveys. And so that is the manner in which the master plan was crafted. I would also remind you that the master plan does include a aggressive goal to achieve 20% of the town's tax revenue through business taxes to help offset the burden on the residents. And as of today, we are not coming close to that. I don't have the figure in front of me, but I just spoke with Jeff earlier. That is something we will hopefully have for the continuation of this hearing taking place on the 17th.
My impression is that a lot of the discussion in those days was around the notion of town character and what did we want Westford to look like in 5, 10, or 20 years. One of the things I think that needs to get baked into this discussion is if we make this change, which is a dramatic change from what we've had, what is going to be the impact on Westford in 5, 10, or 20 years? And is that something we want? And I think it needs to have a lot more discussion that isn't only the business interest being represented. We really need to get a lot more residents involved. And a lot of the residents I've talked to lately don't even know this is coming up because they heard it was voted down in the fall. They haven't been following the boards and so forth, and the outreach message has just not gotten out. And I think we really need to be more aggressive in promoting these upcoming 2 meetings if we have any hope of getting reasonable resident turnout.
Well, that's the purpose of the public forums, is to hopefully get that word out and get word of mouth and get some feedback and discussion at those open forums.
Darren, if can I just add one thing? I was on the implementation committee for a little while with Bob. It was maybe 15, 16 years ago, and I think that master plan at that point was maybe 10 years old. So things change in 25 years. So I've been here my whole life. I think if one thing this town has done well is to keep the businesses on 110 and Route 40. Keep the businesses on that corridor. We need the business. We need the restaurants. I'm all for the mom and pop restaurants, but you know, that's not what the people want because they're not surviving beyond Paul's Diner and maybe the butcher shop. So we allow drive-throughs for banks. We allow drive-through for pharmacies. I just think that, you know, saying, well, we voted it down 30 years ago is not justifiable to say we shouldn't be discussing this and looking at alternatives today. Thank you, Darren.
And if I may add to Mike's point, which I agree with, while I was not on the master plan committee, I have been in town now coming up on 20 years. And one thing that has certainly changed is, well, Cornerstone Square went in and a whole lot of money was put into increased traffic flow into the Minot Corner area. And one question that I have is, you know, what is the relative occupancy rate of the various strip malls, plazas that we have in town, which I think we all know is clearly not where it needs to be to get us to that 20% of the tax rate for the town from business and not from individual property owners. And another question that I want to have is not, you know, sort of a subjective one, which is, you know, I just don't want to see more traffic. I have a question, which is, you know, what level of capacity is that infrastructure that the taxpayers of the town paid for being used for today to get cars efficiently in and out of our commercial district? So that's a question that I'd very much like to understand rather than just say, I don't want to see more traffic.
I might add, excellent points from Dylan and Mike. When I joined the master plan committee because I was on the Route 110 master plan committee, which was my very first committee in town. And there was a lot of design controls that we wrote into the Route 110 master plan. And those design controls are still in effect and used today. They're used all along the Route 110 corridor, and they also apply to the sections of Carlisle Road down to Liberty Way and Boston Road up to Crown Road. And I would say, I think as an example of what the planning boards in the past have done, look at the character and feel that we were able to negotiate as a town with, like, the Chili's restaurant, with McDonald's. Those are not just a Chili's or a McDonald's that was slapped in. Specifically, the Chili's restaurant, where we worked with the developer at the time so that it would recreate the character and the architectural effects of what had been the Reed Barn, which was on a site that was adjacent to where Chili's is located today. The Reed Barn was relocated and saved, and you can still see it. It sits down on the 4-H fairgrounds. McDonald's has also got a lot of nice siting aspects that are not traditional in terms of how it's nestled in the trees with the increased tree canopy and some of the use of materials and how it's situated. So it is a character feel, I think, that is still somewhat Westford. It's Route 110. It is not what you get when you go up on Drum Hill Road. And those are the kinds of design elements I think we are looking to replicate if we did consider putting in drive-through restaurants, looking at how you screen the ordering kiosk and the ordering sign through the use of either vegetation or the use of wood screening. There's a number of different methods. So, I think we as a planning board, I can speak for myself, will continue to be aggressive in looking at those design elements, many of which are talked about in the Route 110 master plan. We used a lot of things like natural walls. The walls were placed such that they would hide the headlights of cars in some of the businesses. And if you go up and down Route 110 to look at what makes it special, it is things such as the tree canopy. It's the use of the walls in some of the businesses that help to minimize the impact of car lights coming out and shining onto Route 110. And that's just a few of the features. The 110 master plan, if I recall, was well over 100 pages, if not 200 pages long. So I'd remind people to look at that. And again, that can also be modified and amended if there are additional design guidelines we want to consider. And that was written not only by members like myself as a simple town resident. We actually had a number of consultants who were architectural design specialists, paid consultants that we hired, as well as landscape architects that gave their services as we designed those design guidelines. So.
Yeah, good points. I think it's important to note that, if drive-throughs are approved, it's not, there's going to be certainly, controls there with conditions and so forth that, again, trying to maintain that character. So I don't think it's, just because if there is a possibility for a drive-through restaurant to go in, I don't think we dispense of all the other site plan things we look at on any other particular plan. So it's a good point. Matt, any other questions? Or is Paul still there?
I've since muted him. But if Mr. Fassbender, any further questions?
Well, thanks very much for that answer. One other observation is a 4-question survey has the appearance of being a survey that's done to check a box to say we did a survey, and probably doesn't add a whole lot to the conversation other than the first question, which is sort of a popularity contest on do we want it or not. In my opinion, it would be a whole lot better if you could add a few questions, as you and I had talked about on the phone, really considering some of the alternatives that are currently available and focusing on trying to understand the question of what is it about drive-throughs that are not being met by the current alternatives that the restaurants can already do, and why are they the only alternative that satisfies those needs. It will really help us focus in on what the target is that we're shooting for. And as also we talked about, looking at the idea of separating the ordering queue from the pickup queue, I think is a very modern idea. It's really smart. And maybe that's something we might want to look at requiring as opposed to making it optional, to get rid of the single queue that involves ordering, waiting, and then paying and checking out. So I think we're on the right track, and I think the more dialogue we have, the better the ideas will get. Thanks very much.
Before you go, Mr. Fassbender, Jeff, I don't know if we've put the survey out on the site yet. If you could, Paul, can you submit some suggested additional questions by tomorrow morning or tomorrow evening?
Okay. I'll give that some thought. I think a lot of it will come from the note that I put in the packet, you know, about the various 5 alternatives that we talked about.
Right.
Because that's something the residents use.
You've seen the style of the survey questions. If you could write it in some of those styles, I think we could consider getting those questions in.
Okay. Are you around for a phone call in the morning or something?
Yeah, in the morning, at 10 o'clock to 12, I think I'm free tomorrow.
We can handle this offline. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Great. Matt, any others?
So I just was going to run through questions, comments received, so they can be included in the record. As Mr. Fassbender mentioned, his comment was any plans to address the questions and concerns raised in the packet comments. Going on, Juliet Mount commented, other cities, including Boston, are beginning to limit or ban fast food drive-throughs in the interest of emissions reductions. She also then followed this up with, excellent point, Bob. This was about 20 minutes ago. She continued on, air quality and the character of the town were considerations, as I recall. This might be referring to the master plan discussion from about 10 minutes ago. Pedestrian safety and promoting walkability were additional reasons why so many cities across the country are banning drive-throughs. Supporting small businesses that have been in this town for years would also be hurt by this change. And last,
let me, if I could respond to that.
Yep.
So I think the intent of that statement is to talk about small restaurants. One of the things I've been working with the EDC and I've spoken with Dylan about is what is called the halo or the anchor effect. And these are business effects in which if you increase traffic to an establishment such as a fast food restaurant through a drive-through, you are also going to increase visibility and potentially most likely increase the level of business at other businesses. So for example, we've been talking about McDonald's. Somebody comes over to go through the drive-through McDonald's and they see the paper store, or they see Whole Foods, or they see, you know, one of the other businesses there in those little strip malls. So other small businesses that are not restaurant will also and should also benefit from increased visible traffic due to the presence of this increased level of restaurant service. So I want to emphasize that not all of the impacts are necessarily bad for small businesses.
All right, good point. Thank you.
Mr. Minucci asked the question, what is this second meeting that has been mentioned several times where public is asking more questions or voting?
So there should be an announcement on the website, hopefully tomorrow. We're going to be running 2 information forums on this topic, and those are going to occur at 7 p.m. on this Thursday, the 6th of May, and a second meeting on the 26th of May. In addition, I've also agreed to participate in some meetings with the League of Women Voters. There is a social gathering to discuss a select few of the town meeting warrant articles, and that's going to be, I believe, on the evening of the 19th this month. And then there will be, I think, a full review of all warrant articles just prior to the town meeting by the League of Women Voters on the night of I think it's Thursday, the 3rd of June. So there's 4 upcoming meetings in all.
Bob, how do people find out how to sign up for your informational meetings?
Well, we're trying to get it on the front page of the website, but it will definitely be listed as one of the events for each of those days. And so there will be an information form listed, hopefully tomorrow for the 6th at 7 p.m. I just received prior to this meeting from Jeff and Matt the the web meeting URL. So we're working to get that out on the site.
Right. I think it's probably worth noting that we're likely going to continue this hearing till the 17th of May meeting, so people can also tune in back then and continue the discussion then as well. Matt, any others?
I see a hand raised for someone who previously spoke. Didn't know if you were open to second round of comments.
If it's new information or comment, yep.
Mr. Chu?
I'm sorry, my hand was up by mistake.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. A lot of participation there from the audience. Anything from the board? Any other comments from the board or staff? I think the probably makes sense then to continue this public hearing item to the next meeting of May 17th. Is there a motion to continue PB 2113 to the May 17th Planning Board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye. Nice job, Bob.
All right, thank you. Thank you all. All right, that brings us to our next zoning bylaw amendment discussion. This one is for PB 2114 to consider amending the zoning bylaw to update section 9.5.1, which I think I mentioned as part of when I announced the earlier one. I think I misspoke about that when I opened up the original one, but is there a motion to waive the reading of the public hearing notice for PB 2114?
Move.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of waiving the public hearing notice, say aye. Bob? Kate?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
I say aye. Bob, it looks like you're frozen. I think we lost him.
That last
All right.
topic might have made him hungry. He might be headed to a drive-through.
Can you hear me, Jeff?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yes.
Was that Bob?
Yeah, that's me. I only see
Okay.
Jeff moving. Everybody else is frozen in time.
All right. So did you vote in favor of waiving the reading of the public hearing notice?
Yes, I did. Aye.
Okay. So is there then a motion to open up the public hearing for PB 2114?
Move.
Second.
All right, so a motion and a second. All those in favor of opening up the public hearing for PB 2114, say aye. Mike?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
All right, I say aye. All right, so this is coming to us as a result of a citizen's petition. I'd like to first go to staff, and then we can go to the applicant to give us an overview of the request.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, whether or not the sponsor of a zoning bylaw amendment is by citizen or a board, the planning board is still obligated to hold a public hearing. I know that the petitioner, or the primary petitioner in this case, is in attendance, and perhaps in the interest of time, we could let Mr. Chu speak to this item.
Great.
Yes, again, good evening to the board there. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about this proposed amendment to section 951. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't believe that any board in town should overrule a town meeting vote. The board is an elected official body of the town representing all of the constituents in town. Here, the town meeting has decided one way or the other on a particular zoning bylaw, and I don't feel that any board should overturn the will of the people. So that's basically what I have proposed here in my amendment. And by striking out the initiation of a reconsideration by the planning board. I'd be glad to answer any questions on to my reasons for proposing such an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's fairly straightforward. I'll go to the board. Does anybody have any comments or questions on this? I'll go to Mike.
I don't have any comments or questions. I mean, I feel it's reasonable for anybody to go back before town meeting. Town meeting can change its mind, so I won't be supporting this, but I don't have any other questions or comments.
Great. Dylan?
I guess I just had a question for town staff, which is why is it that the planning board is specifically called out here as the board that could bring forward another article to town meeting sooner than 2 years after the date of an unfavorable action? Is that specifically to align two town planning efforts that might require being heard sooner than that?
So I can't speak for all of Chapter 48 of the Mass General Laws, but I do believe it's because the planning board is special in this regard, because in general, the planning board is responsible for the master planning efforts. And in general, they do sponsor usually the majority of zoning bylaw amendments. And since you folks are in charge of the long-term planning efforts, it would make sense that if anyone is to be given that special privilege, it would be you folks, because of the charge that you have as a planning board. So I can think of no other entity that would be better suited for it. And so I think that's why you folks are given that special provision under Chapter 48.
There is one minor point to make here, Dylan, and it's that the planning board doesn't necessarily have to be, isn't considered to be bringing this back to town meeting. It can be brought back to town meeting by any petition group, by another board. The select board could choose to bring it back and put it on the warrant, but it can't go back to town meeting unless it is favorably recommended by the planning board to do so. So I think that's a subtle change there.
Yeah.
So you are correct. The planning board doesn't have to in any way sponsor it. They just would have to provide a favorable report. And so there is actually some uncertainty as to whether or not someone could make an argument based upon even, say, the October meeting, you gave a final report. I'm not sure that case law has settled the matter. Is that enough to prevent someone from coming back within 2 years? I think it's certainly strongest if in any given petition, any town meeting, it's simplest if the planning board simply weighs in each and every time. And if that's a favorable report, there's no question. But someone could just as well make an argument perhaps about a prior town meeting if the window is still less than 2 years. But
Thank you. That's all. That's my only question, Darren.
Great. Kate?
I'd like to look at it as a whole and not just because of drive-throughs. But as Jeff has stated, planning board bylaws are very different from general bylaws in the town. They have a different level of requirements to get enacted and such. And they do go through a lot of scrutiny and such. And it might be that there is a bylaw that is worthy of being adopted by town meeting, but maybe something happens in town meeting. Zoning bylaw, maybe there's one that really should be enacted, but something comes up in town meeting that, oh yeah, here's something that somehow got overlooked and it's critical, so the zoning bylaw doesn't pass. But it's a bylaw that needs to be there or is desired to be there. And rather than having to wait 2 years, this gives the planning board the opportunity to correct the deficiency and bring it forward again. And so that's why I feel it's important to keep this language in there, that we do have this option to bring something again, even though it might have failed for whatever reason it failed. And that's my logic.
All right, thank you. Bob?
I guess one question I have to Mr. Chu as the applicant is, has he reviewed Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5? Because specifically in that section of the law, it does provide for just this kind of requirement that for zoning bylaws to come back to town meeting, it can only do so with the favorable recommendation of the planning board. And what's his feeling on that? Because this is not something that was written specially for Westford. This is adopted straight out of Mass General Law.
Yes, Mr. Schaefer, I'm aware that of the Mass General Law here. I was under the impression that Westford adopted the Mass Law only as a model, but not necessarily want to reinvent the wheel. So they copied the wording word for word here as to this this section of the bylaw that that required any town meeting vote to stand for 2 years. So if I need to be corrected, fine. But as I understood it, the town could change the bylaw by the 2/3 vote.
Do you have evidence of any other towns in the Commonwealth doing that?
No, I do not. And I'd like to just let me just insert a correction here to Ms. Hollister. It may appear that I'm trying to tie the drive-through restaurants to this, but basically I was prompted by the discussion on the drive-through restaurants to take a look at this 951, and I wanted to maybe change it because I just felt in general, overall, the town meeting vote should carry forward at least for the 2 years.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's important to note that, it's not like a veto where we're overruling the town meeting vote. It's simply a matter of bringing it back to the town meeting with perhaps different information. So that's what's going on here. All right, any other comments, Matt, from the audience?
I do not see any hands raised. I do not see any questions asked.
All right. Anything else from the board? Is there a motion then to continue PB 2114 to the May 17th planning board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? So all those in favor of continuing PB 2114, say aye. Mike?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to our fifth zoning bylaw amendment discussion, which is PB 2115. To consider amending the zoning bylaw to include the mere residential multifamily overlay district. Again, this is a citizen's petition. Is there a Motion to waive the reading of the public hearing notice.
So move.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor of waiving the reading, say aye. Mike,
Aye.
Dylan,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
I say aye. Sorry, motion to open the public hearing for PB 2115.
So moved.
So move. Second.
All right, so motion and a second. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye. Mike,
Aye.
Dylan,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
I say aye. And similar to the last item, again, this is brought by a citizen's petition. I'll go to Jeff to see, Jeff, if you want to give us a quick overview, and then we can go to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a zoning bylaw amendment. It is slightly different than some of the other citizens petitions because our zoning bylaw requires that the planning board also have a concurrent public hearing to review a conceptual plan that represents the proposal. And so throughout the course of this public hearing, you're not just going to be talking about whether or not it makes sense to have this zoning bylaw amendment, but also to put yourself in as good a position to make as informed a decision about your recommendation to town meeting. So just with that, I think maybe we could turn it over to the applicant who will walk you through more of this process.
Great.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Attorney Melissa Robbins. I'm on the line, but my camera icon hasn't come up yet, so you can't see me yet. But that's okay because I have Matt Salem running the presentation, so we can operate this way if you'd like.
Perfect. All right, great.
So for the record, Attorney Melissa Robbins from the law firm of Farrell and Robbins. I'm here tonight for Clark Property Development. Also with me tonight is Scott Clark, who is the manager of Clark Property Development, and also Katie Enright, who is the engineer of record from Howard Stein Hudson. As Jeff has pointed out, we're here tonight for a citizen's petition to amend the senior residential multifamily overlay district, or I'm going to start calling it senior mod. We'll save ourselves at least 20 minutes if I do that.
Please do.
Jeff had pointed out, it's a little peculiar in that not only do I have to do a citizen's petition, but I also have to come here before the board for the board to review a conceptual high-level plan of the overall development. After town meeting, if this is approved, what would happen is we would come back to this board for review and approval through the site plan review process as is highlighted in your bylaw, but also for any other relief that we may need, such as a stormwater management permit. As this board may be aware, this bylaw has only been used once before, and conveniently that project is located directly across the street from this project. The project is known as the Village at Stone Ridge. The town's been actively trying to develop senior housing and senior housing. Developers have found a way to do it through the zoning process, and the town itself is trying to do it through a couple of affordable housing projects that are trying to get off the ground now. The redevelopment of the site into senior housing will not only help to get to the town's goal of creating senior housing, creating affordable senior housing, but will also help to eliminate a nuisance in town for the gathering of young adults in a party location, much to the sadness, I'm sure, of anybody 25 and under listening to this meeting still this evening. But I think as pointed out on the police chief's comment letter that was in the planning board packet, this could help to eliminate some injuries and deaths that happen at that quarry almost every year. In order for this to be approved at town meeting, the applicant has to prove that this site meets the purpose and design requirement for the senior mod bylaw. That's the duty of the applicant at this point, and that's something that we have to prove to this board as well before we can get your endorsement for a town meeting. We have to prove that we meet the general requirements, and I'll take this opportunity quickly to run through these because I know we're getting late in the evening. The first component is use, and that's actually the easiest one of all. The use here has to contain units which one owner occupant is 55 and over. This project will be in conformance with that requirement, as we'll have covenants in place which will be reviewed by your town council that will require that one of the owner occupants be 55 and over. As I've done the very easy one, what I will do now is ask for Katie Henright from Howard Stein Hudson to step in and start going through some of the technical issues that are raised in the bylaw and the design requirements. Katie, are you unmuted?
Yes, I believe so.
Or Matt,
Can
could you
everyone hear
unmute
me? I believe I should be unmuted as long as everybody can hear me. I'm on a headset. It's after bedtime in my house.
Yep.
So I'm going to
We
walk.
can hear you, Katie.
Okay. I'm going to walk through the Westford zoning bylaw and just explain to you how we feel we meet the requirements of the bylaw. So I'm going to go through 8.4.4 and talk first about the minimum dimensional requirements, specifically density, which I'm sure you're all concerned about. Essentially, the way the bylaw is written is that you can have one bed per 8,000 square feet or 2 dwelling units per acre at 150 units total maximum. So our land area is 43.59 acres per the assessors. It's 2 parcels in the town of Westford. And your bylaw specifically states that an acre in this case is defined as 40,000 square feet instead of 43,560 square feet. So when you develop the number of acres that we have per this bylaw, it actually bumps us up to 47.46 acres per the bylaw. And so at 2 dwelling units per acre, we end up with 94.93 units or 95 units, which we're showing on the plan today. As part of that, you also have a dry area requirement and a wet area requirement. And you can see from the calculations we provided in the narrative that we're only about 8.8% wet area. And that includes the quarry hole, and it includes a couple of wetlands that have been mapped by GIS on the property. We have yet to have a wetland scientist go out and flag the property. That'll be something that we'll do as we move through the process a little bit further, and we'll be able to locate those wetlands, the absolute property lines as surveyed by a professional land surveyor, and get those numbers essentially a lot more exacting than we're showing them today. The dimensional controls at the site feature a frontage requirement, which we have about a little over 100 feet within the town of Westford, but we have over 1,000 square feet within the town of Tingsboro, and that's on the 12 acres adjacent to the site as part of common ownership, but that we're not actually showing any development on today, nor have we conceptualized any future development there as of yet. Front yard requirement is 75 feet. We're actually due to the size and shape of the lot. If we can move to the next slide, it might be a little bit easier to see the site plan imagery a little bit better. There we go. You can see the first set of units is significantly back from the road. It's about 500 feet. And that's because of the side yard and rear yard requirements being 100 feet for a structure within the senior mod bylaw. So if we put 100-foot offset around the entire property, essentially that logistically is where we can start putting units. So you can see we only have our access driveway as we come in through the site, and that's within our 100-foot perimeter. That's the next part of the 844 bylaws to talk about that 100-foot perimeter. And basically your bylaw allows it to allow for access. So there's 2 points within the site where we're within the 100-foot with site improvements. It's at the entry where it's unavoidable to gain access to the site. And then there's one piece of property between the quarry hole and the Hammerhead lot, which is the Bruno's property, similar, kind of right where we have that emergency access, that we're also within 100 feet of the property line. And that's an existing cart path that actually wraps around the quarry hole in that area. So it's a developed cart path that's in that area. And that's the only other area on this property where we're showing driveways and building within the 100-foot perimeter. As we move to the next stage of the bylaw, we're talking about design process. And so one of the first things that Melissa and I did with Mr. Clark was to walk the property and really understand what the property looked like and the different basically the context and understanding the site, and essentially moving into this kind of design process section of your bylaw about the open space and the design requirements, et cetera. So as we start to evaluate the site, we're looking at basically where the site is and what types of things the site has that we want to design both for and kind of against. So we're right upon the town line with the town of Westford and Tingsboro. As you can see, that upper line along the edge of that plan. We've got Jocko Drive in Tingsboro. Just to the north of us, to the east of us, we have Caldwell. And there's a large conservation piece of property there that kind of creates that indent into this property. Then to the south of us, we have the Rita Miller School. And then to the east of us, we have Vineyard and Tyler Lane that come off Tingsboro Road. So what we were looking at is certainly we need to gain access from Tingsboro Road. The first basically 1,000 feet of the property, there's a pretty significant climb, which you can see pretty evident from the street to a plateau. So what we're looking at doing is basically kind of meandering up the hill in that area to the plateau that exists there today. The plateau is open and there is exposed, what I would consider exposed ledge within that plateau. And then we start to reach the area of, right as you move through that plateau, there's a cart path that wraps essentially around the entire distance of the quarry hole. And we were able to follow that cart path. It looks like it's probably a car and a half wide. It's compacted gravel that runs around the quarry. There's also a lot of trails that run through the site that head down towards the Rita Miller School and then out towards Caldwell and kind of wrap back around to the quarry hole too. Some of those you can see on aerial imagery because you can see where the tree line parts. Specifically the compacted gravel road that runs through the site, you can see pretty well from those aerial imagery. But there's a lot of material removal that happened there, obviously, basically from Tingsboro Road to the quarry hole itself. There might have been some other areas on site where material had been removed. There's lots of stockpiles of rock excavations. There's the quarry hole itself, which is really the centerpiece of this property. There are some wetlands that you can see on this picture that we've colored in blue. And again, those haven't been yet flagged by a wetland scientist, but they're adjacent to the conservation area. Then there's the cart path and the trails that all exist. So those are all important features that we wanted to include within the layout and the design of the project. We start to evaluate the context, which is the next portion of your bylaw. So we're looking at the different physical things within the property. Your bylaw calls out stream corridors and wetlands, transportation, road and bike networks, cultural connections, and recreational opportunities. So where this development sits offers, certainly some different connections and some different recreational opportunities. We definitely wanted to look at where the wetlands and the quarry hole exist. We wanted to evaluate the open space areas and the connectivity to the Westford conservation property that's off of Caldwell. We wanted to look at the continuity and see if we could offer some recreational opportunities with the Rita Miller School. And we also wanted to provide some pedestrian connectivity within the site development to those trails and also to the quarry hole itself. So we looked at a lot of those different items when we were looking at the context of how we wanted to lay this project out. So a couple of things that we've built in to the property. Well, actually, we really started looking at this based on the quarry hole itself and where those existing paths and cart paths went around the quarry hole. Mr. Clark is very excited about really celebrating the quarry and making it a centerpiece of this project. So that was certainly very important that we create that ability to celebrate the quarry. And also to provide connectivity to the conservation property and also to provide a great place for people to live. So when we first started laying this out, we looked at the 100-foot offset from all of the properties nearby. We looked at the existing quarry hole where we thought ledge was going to be. Soil mapping for the area shows that there's significant soil to the east and south of the quarry hole. Basically a Hollis outcrop, which is a hydrologic soil group A, which looks great to an engineer like myself when looking at things like drainage and septic. And it shows a greater restrictive layer of greater than 6 feet. We haven't done any soil testing on site yet. Certainly, again, that's something that we're going to need to look at both for our wastewater system and for stormwater management as we move through this process. But for now, we're really looking at kind of that southern area as being an area that might be best planned for wastewater, and that would allow us to create that field area too, where we'll be clearing a large area that would essentially have to be a grassed area for wastewater treatment. But that's still something in planning that we're looking at doing. But it does appear from mapping we have significant soil to that east and southern area on site. And then we were really looking at, so the 100-foot buffer from our neighbors, we were looking at the 50 no build, or the 50 no construction, no touch, and 75 no build from the wetland areas. And also looking at connectivity from the conservation piece to the quarry hole. We want people to be able to continue to visit the quarry hole, certainly not for the activities they might be doing now, unwatched and basically unaccompanied, but we wanted the trail systems to continue. We want connectivity to that conservation property. We want people to be able to explore and visit the quarry itself and basically celebrate its existence. So those were all important elements to how this ended up being laid out. The design requirements are also 846 of your bylaw regarding water. We had started talking to your water utility. There are conversations about this being connected to town water. That is certainly our preference, and it appears to be the town's preference from our early conversations now. We do not have a plan as to how that would happen or where that would happen quite yet, but there is water on Caldwell and there is water at the Rita Miller School. Regarding drainage, we will have to do significant soil testing out here. We will have to meet both your local bylaw and the Mass Stormwater Management bylaw. So we will be looking as we move this project forward at soil texture and water table and figuring out how we're going to take care of our pre to post development flows and volumes. Building separation. So the bylaw states that anything essentially more than 2 stories, the buildings themselves need to be 55 feet apart. If they're 2 stories or less, they're 40 feet apart. For this proposal, we have 40 feet of separation between each of the buildings. And the buildings have been designed as of now in 1, 2, 3, and 4 blocks, essentially. Again, this is all early in the process and is subject to change. The blocks that we're using here today are the blocks that are similar to Mr. Clark's Carlisle Road project. And they will be getting smaller essentially as we start to work with an architect. And he's essentially looking at units that are about 1,800 to 2,400 square feet apiece. Mostly 2 bedrooms with some 3 bedrooms as the bylaw allows. But again, we're still kind of working on what that looks like as we move the project forward through design. Parking, we're looking to park people within a garage, either 1 or 2 garages at each of these units, and then have a driveway to accommodate an additional 2 cars. We'd like to work with the fire department as we move the project forward to figure out where along these roadways it makes sense to have our visitor parking, and certainly the planning board staff also to add additional paved surfaces to get cars off the road in various visitor locations throughout the development. We also wanted to make sure, and we'll commit that the height will certainly be less than 35 feet, no more than 5 units per structure. Minimum floor area is 780 square feet in your bylaw, and as I stated, will be about 1,800 to 2,400. No more than 10% 3 bedrooms, and that's something that we'll look at in the designs of these units. As you all know, and Mr. Clark knows too, that a lot of people are working from home these days. So we want to make sure that we can provide people with a space that they could work from home, but certainly we wouldn't want that to be considered as a bedroom. So we'll certainly be working with staff and Board of Health and our architect to ensure that these areas could be preserved for a work from home space as we develop the architectural plans in the future. Screening, it's important to us that we include beautiful landscape architecture as part of this project. That'll include screening of our sewage treatment plant, once we figure out where that is going to go. Trash, we anticipate each person having their own trash receptacle and that a private company would come take care of trash on site. And making sure that our parking is not visible from our residential abutters and the school abutters too. Open space on site. Again, we need 20% of the site to be open space per the bylaw, and we have 60% of the site, and that doesn't include the area in between these units. We could certainly provide this board with the plan to create that kind of open space plan, but our open space at 60% just doesn't consider roads, buildings, driveways, the space between the buildings on site, and basically considers the rest of the landscaped areas on site as open space. And as you can see, significant portion of the open space is uplands. Lighting, we are going to be working on our lighting plan as if we get approval of this overlay as part of the site plan package, and we would commit to certainly meeting the lighting bylaw, but we're looking at fully cut off, dark sky compliant LED light fixtures on site, and we'll be developing a photometric plan as the project moves forward. And I spoke briefly to rubbish, and also regarding environmental protection. Anything that we do on the site is going to have to, well, because we're going to be within 100 feet of a resource area, we'll have to go to the Conservation Commission and to the DEP. So we would be filing a notice of intent under both the local bylaw and Department of Environmental Protection, and we'll have to meet all of those standards. Almost there. 15 is roads. We have looked at the subdivision rules and regulations regarding what the town of Westford is looking for roadways, and we'll be working with your DPW and engineering staff to determine if and also fire staff to determine that everyone is comfortable with the safety and design requirements that we're providing on site as we move forward. We are at this point in our conceptual plan showing a 22-foot wide road, which meets your minor street standards because it's not a through street. And we're also showing sidewalk on one side, but certainly these elements are subject to change. Also, we're making sure that all of our radiuses within the site can accommodate your largest fire vehicle within the town of Westford. And then I believe Melissa will speak briefly, possibly to the affordable units, but we will be providing 15% of the units will need to be affordable at the 3 different requirements that are provided within your bylaw. Similarly to what we have to do with an affordable housing project, these units cannot be discernible from the outside, and they have to be spaced throughout the entire development. So that it can't be in all one area. It can't be all internal units. They have to be spread throughout the project site, and we'll be determining those units too as we move through the process. I know I went very, very quickly because it's very, very late. I wanted to get you through as much as possible. I believe Melissa, I know that there's a lot of concern regarding blasting. I wanted to speak a little bit to the soils. I know Melissa, as part of our presentation tonight, we have a portion of your blasting bylaw that just speaks to all of the requirements that we will need to go to as we move through the process and figure out if and where we will need to blast on site. Melissa, if you want to speak briefly to that. You still with us?
Matt, do you mind just running to the next slide? I think it's the next slide. And just to tell the board quickly while we are trying to get the slide up, we did have a meeting with the abutters. It actually was very well attended, I thought. We had about 40 people there. Your Director of Land Use Management, Jeff Morissette, was also in attendance. And some of their major concerns, number 1 is blasting. Number 2 really is the duration of the blasting and the time for construction, because obviously that will have a long impact on their day-to-day lives. It's this one. Thank you, Matt. And I showed them this condition, which is not in your rules and regulations, but this is your typical blasting condition. And really it's made through the rules and regulations set by your fire department and the state fire marshal's office. Obviously, if we're going to be blasting within 400 feet of any property line or any properties, we would have to do videotaping of any foundations. We would have to do pre and post blast surveys, and we would have to go back out and do an inspection of these properties after the blasting was done. Obviously, there can be no perchlorate in this blasting, and all blasting would have to go with a blasting plan. Now, we don't have any specifics as to until we start actually testing the ground out there. And we wouldn't do that until after we got the overlay in place. But certainly this would be something that was gone through and determined during the site plan review process, and something that's going to have to take a lot of inspection. I know that the planning board wasn't part of the project known as Graniteville Woods, but we did a very similar, that was a very similar site in that we had a lot of material out there, a lot of rock, a lot of ledge. We did some out there, but we tried to do the blasting in limited locations and then try to work with some of the natural features and kept some of the natural stone and items out there as part of the features of the development. And I feel like this will also be a place where we would do that. Also similar to Graniteville Woods, this project also has a giant quarry hole in the middle. I know people are worried about liability, but the liability for the quarry hole actually would stay with the homeowners association. Just like Graniteville Woods, that quarry hole out there is part of the open space that is part of the homeowners association, and the liability remains with them. Katie had hit on the affordable units, and I won't get into any more depth in there. I know a couple of the members had questions as to the size and the location and the price points of these units, but obviously it's a little too premature to state what those would be, except that they would have to be dispersed throughout the project, and they would be, at least some of them would have to be within your state regulations in order to be counted on the units. Just a couple other items that were hit upon at the abutters meeting, other than the blasting. The length of construction, and not just blasting itself, but rock processing, air hammering of the like. I did point out to them that your general condition does hit upon that. It allows for those types of situations, 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, nothing on the weekend. And obviously a blasting plan would have to be in place as part of our site plan review process. Also, they were worried about impacts to resource areas, and we did go through quickly that we would have to hire a wetland scientist, and we will have to file with the Westford Conservation Commission and go through that process. Some of the other issues were as to traffic. They had some concerns about coming out onto Tingsboro Road and sight distance and just how many vehicles were going to be out there. We had noted that if we proceed with this project, we would do a full traffic study so the counts would be provided so that sight distance and traffic could be reviewed during the site plan review process. And lastly, really the big last issue was screening. There's some natural items out there, and there's also some rock piles that really sit to the back of some of these abutters' property. I think some would like some of those features to stay, and some would like some removed. What we've committed to do at this point is if we get much further along in the process, certainly if the planning board supports this project and we go through town meeting, that we would have another abutters meeting prior to site plan review, and certainly reach out to the abutters that directly abut those features so that we can work with them directly to see how we can eliminate those concerns or screen or deal with some landscaping in that area. I think the other big feature on this project is the playing field that we're showing behind the Rita Miller School. It's something that we're excited about. We hope that the soils work out, that we can do that behind the school area. I think Kate had pointed out in her comments that we have to be mindful of that 100-foot buffer, and certainly this would be a place that would be looking for a waiver of that 100-foot buffer if it goes through site plan review. But you can see why the waiver here would be well-founded, because we would be putting this directly adjacent to the school where there's already an existing trail. And so this area would be open to that school area, and then there would be buffering between that playing field and the housing. So if we do go forward with that, that would be an area where we'd be looking for a waiver of that 100-foot buffer. There are a couple other areas on sites that, as Katie had mentioned, that have similar soils that would also be good to look for a secondary leaching field, but this is ideal just because of the amenity that we can give to the school. And I won't liken everything in this project to Graniteville Woods, but I will tell the board that if you drive into Graniteville Woods on your left-hand side, you'll see a great big open field. That is the leaching field. And then around the corner, that other big field is actually the secondary leaching area. So this would be very similar to that layout and design. It could be used the same way. I think we hit upon the high things, and because it's almost 10 o'clock, the other items I think that I wanted to touch upon, I'll hold off on. I do have 2 things I need to request from the board, including a site visit date and a question that I need some action on this evening, but I'd like to open it up for planning board comments just so we can hear some initial comments or questions from the board.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I'm sure the applicant has seen too, we've gotten a bunch of questions from abutters. And also, I know Kate had already submitted a bunch of questions ahead of time as well. So, but I'll go to the board for comments and questions to the applicant. So I'll start with Mike.
Thanks. So reviewing this, I think initially I'm certainly in favor of this. I do share some of the abutters' concerns with the amount of blasting that could happen. I think that we could protect them in conditions and make sure that their interests are protected. I do note that I think Jeff and I had a conversation earlier today about, you know, what could happen up there. And I think of all things that this may be the best scenario of what could be used with that land if it's done appropriately. So I don't have any questions at this point. I think the presentation was great. I would support the town meeting article, and you know, I look forward to looking further into this project.
Great, thanks. Dylan.
Thanks. You know, I think there's some issues that were raised in, you know, some of the feedback from various town departments that were in the packet, you know, not the least of which is the efficacy of that emergency access road and whether or not that could actually be used by emergency vehicles in its current configuration. Understanding that this is a conceptual plan, you know, it kind of shows that it's possible, but I think that would probably have to be worked on. You know, the massing in, I would say, the northeastern part of the site, so east and slightly north of the actual quarry hole itself, you know, that's pretty dense over there. You know, I wonder if there's an opportunity to spread the homes in that area out a little bit or move them, you know, to other locations in the site just to keep that area from being, you know, so densely stacked up with houses. And then, you know, because we're keeping it kind of quick as an initial sort of thoughts here at this hour of night, I would comment on the playing field. I think it's a great idea. Oh, on the blasting, I wanted to comment on that as well. Somebody did raise an issue, and I could see this. I don't know if we'd want to take into consideration the proximity to the Rita Miller School and kids potentially, you know, in school during blasting hours. You know, kids have been disrupted a lot over these last, you know, the last year and a half from their studies. And certainly I think that's something we should be sensitive to if there's going to be blasting in the areas that there's a school in very close proximity to the site. So we'd be interested to understand if we could further limit blasting hours so as to not affect school hours. And with the playing field, as someone who's, you know, volunteered a good amount of time on various youth sports programs in town, I would say that, you know, there's an abundance of grass fields in town. And there's a relative shortage of turf fields in town. And while I understand that this is a proposed leaching field, I believe that it would be at least somewhat possible based on modern drainage techniques in turf surfaces to potentially allow that to be a new turf field for use by all of the local youth sports programs in town that desperately need more of that when the weather is inclement and not ideal. So those are my initial thoughts.
Great, thank you. Kate.
Hi. I think there is a need for senior housing, so it's nice to see somebody actually using this part of the bylaw. Comment on the playing field since it's been brought up. My concern, and this I don't know anything about, so I'd want to hear about it, because it is on private property. Could it be used for publicly available sports, and how to protect the homeowners association and such? I think it's a nice idea to make it available to the Rita Miller School population, but I just don't know how it could actually work, legally work or safely work or whatever. So be interesting to hear about that. I did pose a lot of questions asking about the units, like what the size of the units are going to be. I'm interested in the proposed pricing for the units. And the reason I bring this up is I've heard from several people, older people in town, who they're aging out of their homes. Their kids are all grown up. They'd like to move into something smaller. But if you look at all of the apartments and condos that have been built in the last 2 years, they've all of the market rate ones have been marketed as luxury. and they've really been priced too high for the majority of people. So I want to make sure that this isn't going to be another luxury over 55 development. I appreciate some of the units will be larger and have more value, but the size and the prices of the majority of them really need to be within a region that average people can afford. And I'm kind of looking at your abutter over 55 development there at Stone Ridge. You know, most of the units there are like around 1,900 square feet. And that seems to be reasonable. And the prices are in the 400s. So no $700,000 and $800,000, or very few $700,000 and $800,000 units. And so the site walk, I think that will just be interesting. I know you want the quarry, the pictures that you provided are beautiful, but there is the safety factor, especially if there are going to be children, potential for children in this development. I mean, a 60-year-older might have some common sense, but a 12-year-older or 15-year-older might not. So we do need to look at that, how to isolate the quarry so you can't have somebody accidentally getting too close to the edge and falling in or diving in intentionally. So I look forward to the site walk. And thank you for correcting me. I did read the part about the building separation incorrectly, so I stand corrected on that. That's all for now. Over.
Thanks. Bob?
Okay, so I wrote down a bunch of notes. First off, yeah, overall, I think this is a good idea. I think hopefully it should be able to address the concerns about the quarry and also provide housing for an important segment of our population. Some of the concerns I wrote down were just the emergency access. I know this is a conceptual plan, but I was struggling to see how that would actually tie in off property. It looked like it was going to run into some issues with the house where the emergency access was coming out and through. One comment, it may just been the words that you chose, but you talked about probably a private trash service. I would emphasize I'd like to see it be trash and recycling. Just a small nit. I'm assuming recycling would be included. Couple questions I had regarding the blasting. Do we know what, or if any wells are nearby to this site? I think this is an area of town that is unique because of the amount of ledge and quarries up there. So I do want to understand what the risk is to nearby wells. I know we've had some other issues elsewhere in town, so that's going to be important. I think it was Dylan already addressed or the concern about blasting near the school, and that's a concern I have, especially during school hours. And so that may be something where we would have to encourage out of school hours when that would occur. I had one question about the playing field, and that is that to scale? It seemed a tad large for a single soccer field. If I looked at it correctly, it seemed to be the size of the Rita Miller School. And I was wondering if that was actually going to be maybe multiple fields where you showed one.
If I may, Mr. Chair. This is Katie Enright. I believe it's a high school field, just shown to size to be larger than it would be needed to be for an elementary playing field, but we can check on that.
I'm just kind of curious because it just seemed a tad large, but you showed it as one soccer field and it looked like the soccer field was the size of the Rita Miller School. So that's a minor question. It's just people might ask. And again, I realize it is conceptual. Some of the turning radiuses here, especially as you come off that circle and come off of it to exit right out of it back in the main road, looks a little tight for our fire trucks. So we will have to work on that and consider how this works. So, and I realize it's conceptual. But you may get some questions about that if you present this at town meeting. Last question, one of the other questions I had was, I guess, trails. That's still to be defined. But I think trail access up in here is going to be important. One, we have to think about being careful and safe with the quarry, but also providing for trail connectivity, which, well, I didn't see it on the plan. I did hear you address in the comments, so that's good. One question, I know you talked about the wetlands still have to be surveyed. Along with that is understanding what protected species might be up there on the site, because I believe there are spotted turtles in the area, if I recall, when they built Greystone. So that'll be something to pay attention to. And the last question I had was, do you know what the distance is between the entrance road and the intersection of Stone Ridge and Vineyard Road?
Again, this is Katie, and I don't for tonight, but I will get that for the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, just something to think about, because there is going to be a substantial amount of traffic coming out of there. And we will want to worry about site distance as well as just safe separation distance from what is another fairly substantial intersection because of the presence of the villages of Stone Ridge.
Right.
So, but that's really it. That's all I had.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I'm generally in favor. I think it could be a good use of the of that particular parcel. One of the same concerns from the abutters and from staff, from the board as well. Be curious to see ultimately the traffic impact study and the relationship there again with what Bob just mentioned as well, with the Stone Ridge and Vineyard entrances right there. In terms of safety, again with the quarry, just protecting the higher parts of that quarry. And then obviously the fire department access is another thing to certainly be addressed. And then, certainly the concerns of the abutters in terms of the management schedule too, of the potential construction schedule. So those are the main things I had. I think we should probably see if there's any questions now from the audience.
Kathy Bruno, you're unmuted.
Hi, Kathy Bruno and Mark Bruno from 6 Vineyard Road. First, I'd really like to thank Scott and Katie and Melissa for really trying to work with the neighbors on this project. We're in support, obviously, of an environmentally friendly project up there. And I think you all have hit all of the concerns that we have as well. Just to reiterate a few, so you guys nailed it. The corner of our property, is like 80 feet from the actual water. So that being a cart path to be obviously a road in the future is a little concerning because there's only 80 feet between our property and the water right there. And I'm not sure how quite a road is going to fit through there. There's a lot of vernal pools all around there. As I think Bob mentioned, the spotted turtles, yep, they're up there. So trying to figure out those vernal pools and how the conservation piece plays a part in all of that. With the blasting, we have horses on my property. And that's a big concern for us about the timing of when all that happens. Obviously, just like you are all concerned with the school. And the timing of all that and how that's going to affect our wells, because not everybody on Vineyard Road is on town. We're actually all mostly on well water. So I appreciate that the blasting plan, they'll have to do some video with all the butters within 400 feet of that. So we'll definitely have to just kind of keep an eye on that. To the right of our property is a very large stone rock pile. And that is literally 10 feet from the corner of our property or from the side of our property. It runs along one whole side of it. And it's a very large pile of rock. And we had mentioned this to Scott about leaving that pile there. It also gives us some privacy, but to have to deal with them getting that out of there where it's 10 feet from our property, as you can imagine, would be very noisy and dusty and loud. What? So that comes down to the length of the project and again, the timing of when they're removing the materials. Because as you can imagine, where we sit, it would literally be like sitting in the middle of a construction site with beep, 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 and lots of banging. And we can handle it probably for a little while, but we would definitely need to have some timing restrictions on when that occurred. And I think that, and the number of units, yeah, I know there's 94 that can be in there, but notice the row coming up off of Tingsboro Road, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something right there along the road going up into it. That roadway really will come close to a lot of the, the neighbors that are right there on Vineyard Road. So not sure why you would necessarily have to have those those there. So, and again, I know this is conceptual, so we look forward to, working in the future with what the actual plan will be. Do you have anything to add? And I think that's it. Thank you for listening.
Great, thank you. Matt, anybody else?
There was one question received from the audience from Vin Floric, and all it says is blasting and private wells.
Yeah, that's certainly a consideration. Anything else from the board for the applicant? I think we gave them a lot of concerns, and I applaud the applicant for having that outreach meeting with the abutters too. I think they probably got a lot of good feedback from that as well. So that's all good. Jeff, in terms of process, do we need to basically vote on getting an advisory opinion as to Chapter 40A, if this is a Chapter 40A eligible location?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know Attorney Robbins was going to bring that up shortly, but I do think that's a good idea. As was mentioned earlier in the meeting, due to some of the recent amendments to 40A, it is possible, because this project proposes multi-family development, it possibly might require a simple majority vote at town meeting as opposed to the typical 2/3 majority vote. So, however, that is up to the project being in an eligible location. And so only select boards or planning boards may reach out to seek an advisory opinion on that. So if this board is willing to take that vote, we might be able to get an answer shortly before town meeting. I understand it's about a 30-day process. So if the board did want to get this opinion, I think it would be useful for everyone for town meeting to know what the quantum of vote would be required. I'm sure our moderator would appreciate that as well. So, and I don't know if Attorney Robbins wants to speak to that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I did reach out to DHCD as well, and it's an online form that Mr. Morissette would have to fill out in order to just request an opinion to find out if this project will qualify for the change in voting. And then after that, they'll seek information. And I stated to DHCD as well as to Jeff that the applicant would certainly supply the information that's requested from DHCD to get the determination to the extent that we have it. So I think this is going to be the normal step in the process for now. This is a brand new legislation, and DHCD is trying to get their arms wrapped around it. So I think this is the only way for us to get the answer for town meeting.
Got it. Kate, you had your hand up?
And I would actually need a board vote for that. I would need the board to take action to direct Jeff to request from DHCD an advisory opinion on whether or not this property is a location that's suitable for this voting requirement.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, I had the same question independent of Attorney Robbins from reading what staff provided us. I wasn't sure that it did qualify. So I move that we direct staff to have town council, would town council be the one, or you, Jeff?
No, so it's a very simple online form that we could, we would request it, but we would end up working with the applicant and town council on this matter.
Okay, so I move that we direct staff to submit a request for review of this project with respect to the changes in 40A concerning required town meeting vote.
Second.
All right, motion is second. Any further discussion? So all those in favor, say aye. Mike?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
I say aye. All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I guess the only other action that I was going to seek from the board this evening was to try to schedule a site visit, and it will be probably a lengthier one if we want to see all the features the board would ask. I would suggest perhaps maybe not trying to schedule it tonight, but just vote to have one, and then we can set out a doodle poll and try to get some times and dates of work for everybody and work on it outside of the hearing to just schedule a day. So schedule to have the site visit, and then we can work on the day after the fact.
Right. Yeah, I think generally everybody's probably in favor of having a site visit. Jeff, do we need a vote for that?
You don't need a vote, and it wouldn't be a public hearing. It's, the board doesn't deliberate, so we can handle all the scheduling offline.
All right, great. Great. Look forward to seeing it. All right, any other comments from the board or staff?
No.
Seeing none, is there a motion to continue PB 2115 to the May 17th planning board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor of continuing, say aye. Mike?
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
I say aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members of the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that brings us to general business. We have a review of draft minutes from the April 20th, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mike?
I abstain.
Okay, right. Good call. Dylan?
No comments. They looked good to me.
All right, Kate?
They look good to me.
All right, good. Bob?
No comment.
I also had no comment. So all those in favor of approving the minutes, the draft minutes for April 20th, say aye. Mike? Oh, sorry, you're abstaining. Dylan?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
I say aye. All right, I think was there one piece of correspondence or something, Jeff? Nothing that required action, right?
No, there was nothing that required action on the board's part.
All right. All right. Anything else to add from the board? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I just want to just say that the end of April, I forwarded an email from the Environmental Action Committee or whatever it's called. Wait a minute. Westford Climate Action Committee. They sent out a notice about a webinar on zero net carbon building, and I did listen to it. And the one thing I wasn't sure of was whether or not in Massachusetts, local towns have the option to develop design criteria or requirements to get to zero net carbon. So I'm trying to research that, whether it has to be at the state building code level or whether local building codes can do it. It was semi-interesting. It was mainly focused on cities though, and concrete and what's in concrete. But
Yeah.
at least it was food for thought. And I think since our town meeting did pass a resolution to go to, you know, pretty close to zero by 2050, I think it's worthwhile for the planning board. We're pretty limited in what we can do, but to at least maybe over the next few years, start looking at what we can do with our bylaws or our rules and regulations to contribute to reduction in carbon. And that's it.
Great. Thank you for leading that. And just a public announcement, tomorrow's elections, correct?
Yep. Please
All right,
vote.
well-
There are contested seats.
That's right.
I'm pulling for you, Kate.
Thank you. Vote for me.
I'll be there.
Early and often.
All right. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Mike,
Aye.
Dylan,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
I say aye. All right. Good night, all.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Good job, everyone.
Likewise.
Aye.